everybody. Sorry for the delay. It is Wednesday, what's today? September
12th.
September 12th. We are live here in Nashville, Tennessee with Nate Carden here, who's Bunker Labs Director of Programs and Partnerships, as well as Dan Kustelski, who's the co-founder of Chalkline Sports. We're going to have an interesting conversation today about sports betting. Is it a gray area? Is it legal? What's going on? Also, maybe a little bit about like early stage funding.
And doing that outside of Silicon Valley.
And doing it outside, and doing it local, which is remarkable.
Local to Nashville,
Right. Quick shout out, we are currently live in the WeWork Veterans and Residence space in Nashville, Tennessee. So we're starting to take this show on the road a little bit. So happy to be here. And Nate, you live here. You know how it is.
Nashville's a great city.
Yeah.
WeWork is a great host. So we have this WeWork Veterans and Residents program powered by Bunker Labs in 14 cities. And Daniel is part of the Nashville cohort that just started up. I've known Dan for a couple years, and he's been involved with Bunker Labs in different capacities, but has a fascinating story. Was a West Point graduate, served in the Army, and I'll let him get into his story, but just has an interesting story coupled with an interesting business idea that he's working on.
So what is, and I want to actually read this off the website. I'm trying to do my phone.
Let's first get into, so you did, what did you do in the Army?
So I was an engineer in the Army, correct. Spent 5 years in the Army, graduated in 1996, graduated from West Point. Engineer in the Army, met a South African. I moved to South Africa in 2003, and I was there from 2003 to 2015.
So you were already out of the military at that
Correct.
point?
That's right. Yes. And when I went to South Africa, I wanted to make a career out of sports, and so I got involved in sports marketing. Luckily, 2010 World Cup was coming to South Africa, so I got involved in that.
Did you come up with the idea for those horns?
Vuvuzelas.
Oh,
Yes, they are arguably one of the most annoying instruments in all of sports.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they've actually been around for a long time in South Africa. So, and then I got involved in sports betting simply because where sports betting is legal, sports marketers marry up the brands, the sports betting brands, and the teams and leagues. And so, I was exposed to pretty early on, and pretty soon, started a sports book in 2009, and ended up running a.
What does that mean? You started a sports book.
Right. So we wrote the software, and we launched a live online sports book. So you could bet on anything, any sport imaginable, and we offered that on mobile and desktop. And that launched in actually 2010, and then we sold that sports book to a land-based casino group in South Africa in 2013.
For that one, were your customers all South Africans, or were they from?
Only South Africans. So we were legal and licensed only in South Africa. That's correct. Yes.
What was going on in like this? So obviously, like sports gambling and sports betting here in the United States, we could dive. I'm sure you know plenty more than we do, but it's up until a couple months ago been completely illegal.
Correct. Outside of Nevada, it has been. Mm-hmm. And so, Nevada has been this one state where if you want to bet on the NCAAs or Super Bowl or whatever it is legally, you could do that in Nevada. Everywhere else you could not. And there was a law that was passed in 1992 by the league supported it, and obviously Congress supported the illegalization from a national perspective of sports betting outside of Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
Before '92, it was legal.
Before '92, it was actually gray. There was necessarily no legislation around it, but they made it illegal in '92. And so, in May of this year, the Supreme Court reversed that decision, and they empowered the states to make the decision on what forms of gambling, like they do all the other forms of gambling, lottery, casino, anything else. The states are empowered to make that decision for themselves, and sports betting is now part of that. So since May, there's been 4 or 5 states that have already started to legalize.
So did you in May just beeline it back to America, or like?
No. You bring up a good point. So I moved back to the States in 2015, and this was well before legalization. People had really started to talk about the legalization of sports betting. Mm-hmm. So I came back, and there is a form of national sports betting. I mean, national gambling online. It's horses, harness racing, dog racing. All of that is legal in the United States in about 30 plus different states. So there is a form of gambling. And I came back and I ran one of those websites out of Lexington, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And so, but being involved in the industry, you started to hear and you started to read the tea leaves about the legalization of sports betting. The NBA, Silver came out with an op-ed article in the New York Times, and he said, look, we should actually legalize sports betting because the leagues want the engagement. Right. They want the passion, and they want people to put $5 down. And so, between the leagues and the casinos, who had kind of opposed a lot of different forms of gambling, they got behind sports betting as well. They knew that the licenses were going to go to the land-based casinos and the tracks, so they got behind it as well. And so in 2016, the rumblings started to come to fruition, and that all happened. It came to a head in May of this past year.
I guess that's what. So I'm curious. What was the reasoning behind making it illegal in '92? Was there a big lobby in Vegas that said we want to be the only? There
were a lot of challenges around maybe the fixing of sports, and I think that's really where the leagues were probably they just didn't want it to be part and parcel.
So the leagues pushed.
The leagues were a massive push. David Stern, in particular, from the NBA, was one of the first ones that waved a flag in '92 and said we need to make this illegal. Bradley, Senator Bradley from New Jersey, proposed PASPA, and it soon became law. Now, 25 years later, it's the leagues again that are saying, wait a minute, you know what? We actually enjoy the engagement, but the challenge, one of the challenges is that people in America bet on sports no matter what.
Right.
There's already $150 billion every single year that gets wagered on sports, mm-hmm. and so it's really a function of, do you as a gambling industry and do you as a sports industry want to keep that illegal, where you don't have things like player protection, like responsible gambling programs. So with legalization of anything, do I dare say, cannabis, with the legalization of that comes tax money, comes it out of the dark and into the light,
right.
and it can be its own form of legal gambling, and that's really probably the fact that it had already been, is being done so much.
Mm-hmm. So it was before it was legalized, $150
billion was wagered every year in the United States, and only $5 billion of that was legal, and that was in Nevada. So in Nevada it was $5 billion. The other 49 states, it was $145 billion.
And they were doing that through
illegal offshore books. They were doing it with the local bookie down at the corner. They were doing it in colleges. They were doing it all over the place. And so that's the estimate from the American Gaming Association, which is the big casino lobbying group in DC.
And so now, do you think that will it rise, or will it stay around that level?
I think when you legalize anything like this, any form of gambling, I think you do have a challenge of moving it from the illegal markets to the legal markets. But the American Game Association estimate that it's about 25 million Americans already that gamble on sports. In the next 3 to 5 years with the legalization, they're anticipating that almost 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 adults will place a legal wager. And so we're looking at 50 or 60 million Americans that will be in some form or bet legally on, it might just be the Super Bowl, or it might just be the Kentucky Derby, or it might just be the NCAA championship. Right. But the legalization, I think, will make that a little more
cool. So where do you come in on this? So Chalkline Sports.
Right. So Chalkline Sports, what we are doing is we're working with all of those potential licensees. So the licenses are going to be issued to the casinos and the tracks. And what we help those casinos and tracks do across the states is acquire customers. We're customer acquisition. We're a data company first, but we are laser focused on acquiring, retaining customers on behalf of those clients of ours. So, for instance, the rollout of legalized sports betting is going to go state by state. New Jersey, Delaware, West Virginia, Rhode Island, Mississippi, those states have already legalized it, Pennsylvania as well. And so there are, those in those states, it's the casinos and the tracks that are getting the licenses, and we're working with those licensees in order to understand customers, understand sports bettors, the personas around sports bettors. I've already run a book, so I understand it pretty well, and I understand the data around it.
So since I know you and you've explained this to me before, maybe for the audience to understand it a little better. Because it's still hard to figure out. But the story that you gave me, that when you came here, even before it was illegal, you weren't running a sports betting company. You were essentially providing the statistics in a visual way.
Correct.
And not necessarily to American sports betting companies.
No, that's correct. So I mean, just as a sports bettor, first of all, we check our phones 150, 200 times a day. So everything we do is on the phone. And gambling on the mobile phones in jurisdictions where it is legal, it's about 70% of all the betting that happens. And what people are looking for is people are looking for small snack-sized pieces of content that help them inform their decision and then place their bet.
Sure.
There are people that want to, belabor over Excel spreadsheets and figure out, should the line be this or should the line be that, and are the Jets right the right price at -3.5 versus whatever team. But for the most part, the casual gambler just wants one or two pieces of information. And what we do is we take a lot of data, we put that into nice little, we call them widgets, put that on mobile phones, and we just allow people to look at data that helps inform them real quickly on what they want to wager. That's what.
So I'm not, and a lot of my friends know this. I don't gamble at all. They're always on Bovada, gambling. They're like, why don't you just gamble? I'm like, I just don't care. I think it's like forbidden fruit almost.
Right.
It's
illegal right now.
Yeah, it's illegal right now. Whatever. Is that so for me, somebody who when you say something like Jets -3.5, I know what you're saying, but only very recently.
Correct.
Is that the idea? Is to kind of educate people to make more educated, informed decisions?
Without a doubt. And if I can compare the average sports bettor in America versus the average sports bettor maybe in Africa or in Europe, in Europe they've been doing it forever. They grew up doing it. They talk about it in media all day, every day. You can't ride the tube in London without getting bombarded with sports betting, either in the newspaper or advertising. And so it is part of the culture. Whereas here in the United States, not so. And so there is certainly an education level that will come with the legalization of sports betting. What does -3.5 mean? What does money line mean?
Right.
If I bet on something that's -110. What does that mean to me? If I put down $100 on -110, how much do I get back? And so there's going to be that level of education, and we provide tools, that help build that education level for the potential licensees.
So how many people are currently working for you?
We have 8 full-time, and we've got quite a few of interns.
So this is the point, that those 8 people aren't doing this massive amount of research on every sports team, every player on every team.
No.
Where do you get all that data from?
So there are data providers, and we simply take we take massive amounts of raw data, and just as we did when we ran our sports book, we would take massive amounts of data on 45 different sports, a bunch of markets per sport, from the second division soccer leagues in Argentina all the way to the Japanese J League, and every sport in between. And you're providing that as a normal sports book. So we're just taking all that same data. We've done this before. We've got the same team that we use to put together our sports book and to provide that. We're using the same team, and we're just providing that, putting it into content format, but also doing some free-to-play games and those sorts of things. So, yeah, there's about in any, I mean, on most sports books, there's probably 3 to 4 million price changes per day. I mean, there's just massive amounts of content and data. What we do is we just chew some of it up and spit it out to people so that they can understand it.
Yeah. It's a good deal.
So Will and I were talking to you earlier today, and like wondering, how do you come up with an idea like this? Right? And your response is, you don't just like have an idea.
No, I got in. $50 billion annual. Tomorrow morning I'm waking up and starting my own.
That's exactly right. So it really, I mean, the idea is probably forged in years of experience, but the problem that I had when I ran a sports book was that the people who bet on my sports book wanted the information on my sports book. Mm-hmm. So for instance, when the Dolphins are playing whoever they were playing, the Titans this past weekend, where is all the money going? Hey Dan, tell me where all the money is going. Can you give me a little bit of information about where all of these people are betting? Are the really smart bettors on this side, or the really smart bettors on that side? And we had all that information on our sports book, but I'm running a sports book. I'm not running a content company. Mm-hmm. So that's the type of information that gamblers want, and they just need a couple of bits and pieces to help them decide that. And I understood that running my own sports book, but I didn't really care because I just want your bets to come in, and I'm trying to make my margins. When you take a step back and you look at internationally, sportsbooks are spending 25-26% of their net revenues on marketing, on acquiring customers, retaining customers. That is an enormous number. I mean, most industries, that would just debilitate them. But that is what's happening right now. So if you're making $1 billion in revenue, you're spending $300 million on marketing to acquire customers and
Are you talking about companies like DraftKings, like FanDuel, like where you literally cannot escape?
To be honest with you, they probably spend more than 25%. They probably spend 150% of their net revenues right now, because I think they're upside down. But a good example of that is a Bet365 or like a Bovado or some of those offshore guys. They're spending massive amounts. And so we go in there and we say, look, we understand, we've run our own sports book. We also understand the metronome of sports betting. And all we're trying to do is just help you find your customers and do it cheaply. You don't have to spend 25% of your net revenues. Yeah. You only have to spend 5 or 6% if you can get the tools, and we provide those tools to go out there and acquire customers.
So it's even like if you can create a widget and put it on an iPhone that says, hey, here's the weather in New England, Tom Brady's hurt,
speaking of New
or whatever data that you can put in there. And this isn't even for people that are maybe betting, but they're looking at the information to do their
correct, could be daily fantasy or maybe
fantasy football league or something like that.
Correct.
And then like you can license that platform to sports betting.
So that's exactly our business model. So we built this platform, and the platform effectively is a sports book. We bring in all the data as though we're running it like a sports book. But then we also baked in some CRM and some marketing automation. We built a lot of business intelligence and a lot of BI tools to visualize that data on behalf of our customers and on behalf of us, so that we understand what's happening. And we just license that software out to all of these potential clients. And so, it's 12. Typically, we try to license it out at 12-month deals. That's really what we've been focusing on probably for the past year.
So I want to be respectful of your time.
Yes.
So two-part question. So we're trying to do this thing where we get some like tactical advice
Sure.
around whatever any industry or subject.
Yes.
So two questions. One is you raised $1 million seed round.
We did.
Pretty cool.
Thank you. In Nashville, sports betting. I mean, in the sports betting industry, we're marketing automation, but I mean, it's a sports betting industry.
So here's like the two-part question, I guess, is how do you go out and raise $1 million locally, so not in Silicon Valley, like not in New York, like,
Yes.
How do you go and raise $1 million?
Yes.
And then what was that like, and what advice would you give to somebody else who's going to raise around smaller or similar rig?
The founders had built businesses and sold it previously, so there was a little bit of a track record. My brother, who's my partner, he had a great track record as well, and had a good network here in Nashville. And I think that the people that back you are and especially at that level, are people that know you pretty well, and they've done this before. They're angel investors. We decided that we would only take a minimum of $50,000 checks. So we tried to weed out a lot of the admin and small check sizes. But I mean that was it's really at that level. It is people that know you intimately and have some cash and are willing to put that money behind you, and that's a tough road to go down.
Because they're friends and family.
Because they're friends and family, and it's there's pressure. Yeah, that's exactly right. But that's what it's all about. I mean, to some extent, it's about looking over the edge and going, wow, it's a long way down, man. I got to make sure that I'm pretty well equipped to run this business, make this business. And I mean, what we're doing right now, I mean, we're about to go into a growth phase where we're almost close to breaking even, and so we're going to go out there and raise maybe a little bit more than $1 million, and we've got that roadmap. But yeah, I mean that first going out there and going cap in hand and asking people for money, I've never talked to anybody where that's fun. There's nothing fun about it. I mean, and certainly I've never lived in San Francisco, so I don't know what that's like to raise money in a place like that. But raising money in Nashville on a non-healthcare or non-music industry, yeah, you're sticking crowbars in people's wallets and you're prying that money out. It's rough. I mean, that can be a full-time job in and of itself.
Yeah. Do you have any was there like a click moment? I mean, do you have any? I guess the advice you gave was like know people. Definitely know people, but also having been there and done that, it means a lot to people when they're going to cut you a check, because they're backing you. They're backing you. They are back in the
grew a business in South Africa and sold it.
And all of the founders and Joe has done it as well, and Jason, our other partner, has done it as well. So I just venture to say that's critically important, and that just comes with gray hair and lots of failures, and how do you grow a business, and that's people have seen that and seen the successes of it, and they're willing to put money behind you. I would also say that the idea and the concept is pretty important. But 2 years ago, we were telling our investors, hey, look, we're doing this whole sports betting thing and this whole marketing automation thing. Tough. There was no Supreme Court decision.
Right.
Now that's probably a slightly different story. The guys in the sports betting industry now are raising money. They're like, hey, listen, we just had a Supreme Court decision. We're about to go from 0 to 100. This industry is over the next 3 to 5 years. That was not us, 2 years ago.
Right.
Do
you see it getting easier?
Say again?
Do you see it just getting easier? Do you see kind of the floodgates opening?
I see the industry growing. I don't know about I don't know about my business getting any easier maybe to raise money. I do. There's certainly a warming up to potential clients that we're seeing without a doubt. I mean, Supreme Court decisions do have a massive impact on the gaming industry.
Can you talk briefly to what was the incentive for you to join the Veterans and Residents program?
Yeah, I would just say, and this is where just like-minded people that there's this base that everybody can kind of go back to. They've all been in the military. They've all done the things that you have to do in the military, and I think that's a really good level set for everybody. Whether it's the Marine Corps or it's Navy, it doesn't really matter. Just the fact that somebody has been in the service and you can sit around and have it at least that level, and then you're saying, okay, now I'm starting this business. There's an immediate connection, and I think that's mean, that's why I
Other
support
people
it.
who are also raising money
Always.
or trying to build their business.
That's
in whatever
exactly right.
capacity.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you just, I mean, I want my cohort to win, and I want their businesses to win, and how do I help them win? And I want to win too, so I'm gonna pull from them what I think I need to pull from them. So I mean, that's really what it's about. I mean, that's certainly why I was involved 2 years ago, and that's why I'm involved now.
Awesome.
Awesome. Maybe parting shot. Can you say, does your wife like hearing about sports as much as you know and talk about it?
Not at all. I will be honest with you. Yes, it is all day, every day sports. Yes, so that is my life. But that's the one I wanted to create, so I enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Very cool. So
Deal.
15 years in the making, right?
sure.
We're at this.
About like that. Yes.
Looking forward to coming back here next year and seeing where you're at.
I'd love to share it.
Awesome. Well, last thing. While we're in Nashville, we're going to Creator Awards tomorrow. So if you're in Nashville, Tennessee, and you want to come to, where is it? Remember the theater?
It's,
Okay, well,
yeah, we'll share it in the
yeah,
in the
we'll
notes.
share it. Next week is the 50th breakdown, and we have a big announcement coming. So please tune in next week. We will be live from Cary, North Carolina. Yeah, so we'll be live from Cary, North Carolina next week for a big announcement with MetLife. So please tune in next week, and thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
See ya.
Bye bye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
man.
job on this one.